Are there really escapees from Alcatraz? If yes, how did they do it? And did they really manage to escape? Welcome to a new episode of Absurd but True. Today, I want to tell you the true story of the escape from Alcatraz, one of the most incredible and absurd escapes in history. But what exactly happened? Our story starts here in the United States, in San Francisco. In the Alcatraz prison, at the time, the ultimate high-security prison. Now, before we understand how they escaped, we need to understand what this prison was like and what obstacles they had to overcome to escape. The island is about 500 meters long and is located about 2 kilometers from the city of San Francisco. To reach it by swimming, you would need to cross cold waters and strong currents. The main body of the prison is about 130 meters long. There was, for example, the courtyard for outdoor recreation, and the harbor, the only access point for boats. And then the cells had bars that were more resistant than those of other prisons. The cell walls were reinforced concrete. The whole structure was extremely monitored both inside and outside. The regulations were very strict. It's said that, according to the FBI, the prisoners were searched up to 12 times a day. By the way, at Alcatraz, prisoners could only take showers with hot water. This was not a privilege, but it was to avoid someone getting used to cold water, thus surviving for a shorter time in the sea in case of escape. So, to escape from Alcatraz, one would need to find a way to leave their cell, escape from the main building, overcome the fence wall without being seen by the guards, and find a way to reach the coast by crossing the cold waters of the bay. So, you would say, no one has ever tried to escape, right? In fact, during the 29 years of Alcatraz's operation, 35 men tried to escape. Spoiler alert. If you ever end up in prison, I strongly advise against it. 21 were caught, 2 were caught and sentenced to death, 6 were killed during the escape, 2 drowned and the last 4. Well, they are the main characters of our story. The first protagonist is him, the prisoner AZ-1441. Frank Morris arrived in Alcatraz in January 1960 after a life filled with quiet crimes such as robbery, drug trafficking, theft, break-ins, illegal fights, and several attempts at escaping other prisons. Basically, he was a bit of a colorful character. The following year, Johnny English and Clarence English, 2 brothers arrested for essentially the same crimes as Mr. Morris, were placed a few cells away. Could they not have met? In fact, they did know each other. They became friends, so to speak, a few years before, during their stay in Atlanta prison, and, having all 3 of them a history of escapees, they immediately thought, guys, why don't we try to escape from Alcatraz? Just for something to do. Frank Morris, the smartest of the gang and the one played by Clint Eastwood in the film The Magic Trio, was in charge of the escape plan, and he also recruited a 4th accomplice, Alan West, who had ended up inside both for robbery and hijacking a plane, so he was also a quiet character. But what exactly was the escape plan? In each block, there were hallways patrolled by guards, while at the back of each cell there were service hallways that were not monitored. Access to these hallways was reserved exclusively for guards and maintenance workers and was normally not monitored. The 4 of them had to dig a hole in the back wall of their cell to reach the service hallway. They also had to find a way to plug the hole and make sure the guards did not notice their absence during the escape. From there, they had to reach the roof, find a way to reach the coast, and then create some kind of boat to reach San Francisco and escape forever. All very nice, right? But how did they do all this? It all starts with a spoon. One says it's a maximum security prison. You can't imagine you could dig a wall with a spoon. In fact, although Alcatraz was theoretically secure, the presence of salt water around the prison over the years caused the deposition of both chlorine and other ions on the concrete structures, making the material weaker. Maintenance was almost non-existent, so much so that even the steel reinforcement inside the material was deteriorating. Morris and his friends realized that the walls were in bad condition, so they stole spoons from the dining hall to start digging a hole in the walls of their cells. But exactly where did they dig? I mean, a hole in a wall is hard to hide. The four decided to dig around the ventilation duct grate. This would allow them to reach the unguarded service corridor, which was the ideal place to start an escape, especially since they could reach the roof of the prison from there. The gang started digging with a teaspoon around the grate, trying to create a gap large enough for a man to pass through. They usually took turns, so that there was always someone on patrol in case a guard came. They started digging around 5:30 p.m. and finished at 9 p.m., just when the prison band was practicing. Yes, because the Alcatraz prisoners not only played musical instruments, but they had their own band. Anyway, once the hole was created, they had to find a way to hide it. And this is where our inmates will show their craftsmanship skills to create the hole cover. As planned, the prisoners used torn magazine pages and then painted everything with a set of colors that was provided to prisoners who wanted to draw. So, we can say that at first glance the fake panel looked very similar to the real wall. Then, of course, they tried to cover it by putting clothes or suitcases in front of it. At this point you might ask, what happened to all the material dug out? Do you remember that they had to find a way to trick the guards in the plan? There you have it. They created dummies using the cement dust itself. They used a mix of soap, toilet paper, and cement powder, basically using the waste they produced, a circular economy. On their own, you can see they're not real heads, obviously. But imagine the heads covered by blankets, and at night they could easily look real. The pink color to paint them was taken from the same paint kit we talked about earlier, while the hair was stolen from the barber. By the way, each person had to worry about stealing the right color hair, so the prisoners had created both something to plug the hole and the dummies to simulate their absence. During the escape, only a means of transportation was missing to leave the island. And here the brilliant idea came from Morris. While reading a magazine called Popular Mechanics, he noticed an article explaining how to build a raft from rubber raincoats. In another issue of the same magazine, he found a tutorial on how to build life jackets in the same way. The magazines were supposedly controlled by the guards before reaching the prisoners' cells. Who knows why, however, those in charge thought that giving a prisoner who was on an island in the middle of the sea a tutorial on how to create a raft to leave was not at all a risk. Good job, compliments 10/10. Anyway, after finding this project, the group managed to collect about 50 raincoats. Practically, to create the raft, Morris had to take the raincoats, cut them and join the various rubber sheets together. They used both the glue that could be bought in the prison store and also attached them to the hot water pipes that ran behind their cells. The raft, once completed, measured 1.8 meters by 4.2 meters and was a kind of inflatable canoe. And how would they inflate it once outside? By mouth? You might wonder. Well, it would have been nice, maybe even fun, but time was running out. Fortunately, they managed to recover a kind of rounder accordion that was also used in the prison band. They managed to modify it and turn it into a kind of pump to inflate the canoe once they reached the coast. If you think about it, the amount of objects they managed to recover from a maximum security prison is huge. Throughout all this, Morris continued day by day to loosen the screws that held the fan on the roof. After 6 months of work, the escape was ready to start. Here we go. June 11, 1962, at 9:30 p.m. The lights go out. Morris retrieves the dummies and distributes them to his companions, who put them under the covers to trick the guards. However, there's a problem that no one had predicted. West's panel doesn't come off the wall and he couldn't escape from his cell. Having understood the situation, the trio thought, well, we tried to get you out, goodbye. So, there were 3 of them left, Morris and the England brothers. They climbed the pipes for 9 meters to reach the fan. They went out on the roof, crossed it and descended a 15-meter pipe outside the building, being careful not to be seen by the guards. Taking advantage of a blind spot in the guard towers, they climbed another pole, crossed the barbed wire fence, and managed to reach the shore of the island. They lowered the raft into the water, inflated it, and finally launched themselves into the sea. From this point in the story, no one knows exactly what happened. Oh, I almost forgot. Do you remember West, the 4th man, the one who was left in the cell? Well, in the end, he managed to knock down the grate, reached the roof, and realized that no one was waiting for him, so he had to return to the cell. It will be he, in the following weeks, who will tell the FBI the details of the plan. Over the years, many people have wondered if the trio managed to reach the coast or if they drowned at sea, but in the end, nothing was ever heard from them again. The FBI never found enough evidence either. So, after 17 years of investigations with no trace of evidence, the case was officially closed on December 31, 1979. The reason? Presumed drowning of 3 escapees. However, the story doesn't actually end there. In 2013, in fact, the FBI received a letter from an alleged John English, now an elderly man. These were his words: "I escaped from Alcatraz in June 1962 with my brother Clarence and Frank Morris, 83 years old, and I'm in bad shape. I have cancer. Yes, we made it that night, but barely." Whether the letter is real or fake, we'll never know. Well, guys, thanks for following us to this point. I hope the story was enjoyable for you and gave you some more information to understand what exactly happened the night of the escape from Alcatraz. Bye.